Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3:01 p.m. and we're here with the Recycled Water Committee of Monterey One Water. It's July 18th, 2024. Let's see, and I'm going to call this meeting to order at this time, and I'll ask for a roll call of attendees.
Rhonda, Castroville,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Pacific Grove.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And we'll go on to item 3, additions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda? I don't think we need any additions. We might need some deletions, but okay, we'll go ahead and move on to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So move. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to public comment. This is public comment on any matters not on the agenda, which is basically nothing, since we have a very full agenda today. There's no people in the audience. Anyone online wishing to make general public comment? Okay, we'll move on. Item 6, considering approval of our last committee meeting minutes. Do I have any motion on the minutes?
So move.
We have a motion and a second on the minutes. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll go on to an update on Pure Water Monterey, item 7.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Smith and committee members. Pure Water Monterey water production is strong, as usual. Since inception, we're at 15,265 acre feet. The end of June marked the conclusion of another water accounting year, and M1W, of course, met its obligations and was able to put some extra water into operation reserves. Those numbers are in the staff report. As far as expansion is concerned, we have 2 items on the agenda. Other than that, both construction packages are on time and on budget. I'd hand it back to the chair for questions.
Oh, yes. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and thank you for the update and move on to item 8.
So
Yes.
again, Chair Smith,
Yes.
Dave Lindau. Action item 8 has to do with an amendment for the design engineer currently providing construction support on injection well phase 4. So we're getting into the meat of the project where certain facility improvements are being identified based upon the operational experience from agency staff. This is a $33,070 amendment for our existing engineer to help us design an improvement, which will ultimately translate into a construction change order, all within budget. If you remember, this package came in a couple $1 million under budget. We're now taking advantage of that to improve the long-term reliability of the facilities. With that, I'd hand it back to the chair for questions.
Okay, well, any board member questions or committee member questions before we go to the public? We'll go ahead and check with the online public to see if anyone wants to make a comment on item 8.
Don't see any.
Okay, no hands raised. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee for action on item 8.
Recommend approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 8. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposition. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lindau. Go ahead and move on to item 9. And we're still with Mr. Lindau.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. So this item is similar to the previous item. This is, however, for the AWPF expansion project. If you read the staff report, there's actually a handful of improvements that we're making. There's more engineering involved with this particular item. This also covers the extra engineering we had to incur to deal with the switchgear that exploded. If you remember, that happened a while back. So we've really collected a number of items and are now hoping to get an amendment for $202,925, same engineer, but the second expansion project. With that, hand it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lindau. Okay. Any committee member questions or comments? No.
Approval?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Second.
All right, we'll just check online real quick if we have any public comment. We have a motion in a second. Okay, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Lindau. We'll move on to item 10. Mr. Rich.
Yes, so this is for a 5-year information technology strategic plan and governance model. Was budgeted for in this fiscal year. The last one we did was in 2015. It was also a 5-year. We've completed approximately 90% of the 30 major projects that are identified in that particular strategic plan. So it's time to update it with our current business processes and, with the current technology landscape. We went out to bid, we received 3 bids. They were all good companies, all very well respected. But one, Third Wave Technology Consulting, came out the best. So it was reviewed by several people within the IT department. So it is staff's recommendation that the board approve this professional services agreement with Third Wave Corporation in a not to exceed amount of $110,300.
Thank you very much. Director Moore.
So, 2 questions. Since this is a professional services agreement, the board ultimately approves a firm, and then you talk with the firm about what they're going to charge, correct?
No, they bid based on the scope of work that we spec'd out during the RFP.
So if the board approves this, then it'll turn into a firm contract for
Yes.
that amount, or, well, maybe they'll be nice to us and be $20,000 less. But second question, can you articulate a little bit what a couple of the characteristics of Third Wave were that bubbled them to the top?
Certainly. So, and I printed out this sheet specifically. The biggest thing in their response that really stood out is they highlighted how much work they have done with water and wastewater agencies
Okay.
when it came to strategic plans and ERP planning and stuff like that. Just to highlight some of them, they did the plan for the LA Department of Water and Power, Las Vegas Water Pollution Control Facility, and the City of Los Angeles Department of Sanitation.
Okay.
I think altogether they've done over 30 strategic plans for wastewater agencies.
Okay, good. And just a comment, I hope you will prod them on security issues, because you've heard me say this before, but between the time of our last budget and personnel meeting and this meeting, I attended a workshop at the National Defense University, which included some classified sessions that I cannot talk about. But the focus was on logistics and on AI. And we have seen articles in the open press about Chinese hacking firms, either directly or loosely associated with their government, injecting themselves and not doing things right now, but quote unquote living off the land, I guess is the current hot term of art, meaning they're just lurking there until China decides they want to take Taiwan, and then all of a sudden, many of our systems here in the United States potentially are in serious trouble, distracting, of course, the American public from what's going on in the Eastern Pacific. So I hope they're very good with helping us develop top-notch and find those folks lurking, living off the land, and
Yeah, there is a cybersecurity.
digitally shoot them.
Yeah, there is a cybersecurity portion to this, but we also have additional solely cybersecurity focused items. And I believe in October is when we kind of present to the board kind of how we've been progressing and maturing over the last year. So, and I'm excited for that meeting. We've done a lot of work, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. We would check with the public for online. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I'll just make one point. I noticed that of the previous plan, 90% of the projects were partially or fully completed. So that's good news. So we're doing what we're setting out to do, and hopefully we'll do that again here.
Yes, absolutely. And what's going to be probably interesting is some of the stuff identified in that plan in 2015 is probably time to redo again as well.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'll take a voice vote now. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I'll move on to item 11 and Mr. Rich again.
Yes, so for the past many years, we have contracted with a company to provide on-site SCADA and PLC support programming services. I think we have worked with TM Process and Control since 2018. The last contract we had, we went out to bid, and that was in 2010. I'm sorry, 2020. And we had addendums 3 years in a row for that particular contract. So it was time for us to go out to RFP again for these services. We went out, we did receive only one bid for these services. It was from TM Process and Controls. They responded, we reviewed the bid, and they're qualified to provide the services that we're requesting. And we have this item budgeted for in our budget. So we do recommend that the committee recommend approval for a professional services contract with TM Process and Controls in a not to exceed amount of $316,260.
Thank you very much. Committee member comments? Yes, Chair Moore.
So we've been with them since 2020?
The last contract that we went out to RFP was in 2020, but I believe they've worked with us since 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And is this sort of technical set of tasks such that we should do some longer term sole source kind of contract approach to them, or?
These particular services are very specialized. As you can see, this is for 3 days a week, and it's, over $300,000 per year. We do have a full-time position on the books that we will be looking to fill this fiscal year, to hopefully maybe we can reduce some of the reliance
Okay.
on this. And what this does is if we find any changes that need to be made within the program of the PLCs, this is what they do. We recently added some of our pump stations onto the SCADA network. So that was part of his duties, was to get that, any SCADA reporting that we have to do as well.
Okay.
But I really like your idea of sole sourcing, and we could work with BBK and see how we could do that, because if you've got the same guy providing this service as far as security, et cetera, then that would certainly help us out going forward when we go out for bidding.
That is a very good point. I think currently we have 3 different companies that have currently won bids for different SCADA projects. So, we don't have that unified setup that you would anticipate from a single company.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, we'll check with the public briefly online.
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, and I'll entertain a motion on this item. Thank you. Thank you. Have a motion and a second. And any discussion? Voice vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go on to item 12.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. Jose Guzman, Operations Manager. I'll be presenting the next 2 items. So for the first item, as part of Monterey One Water National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, we are required to participate in a mandatory ocean ambient monitoring program called the Central Coast Long-Term Environmental Assessment Network, or CCLEAN. The cost for this fiscal year is $189,192.29. However, Since invoicing does not line up with our fiscal year, we are requesting $181,000, $181,287.22, which includes the fourth quarter from fiscal year 23-24 program and the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year 24-25 program. The recommended action is that the Recycled Water Committee recommend that the board approve the C Clean budget for fiscal year 24-25 in the not to exceed amount of $181,287.22. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Moore.
So this network, what is it? Is it a LLC, an incorporation, a nonprofit, a government agency?
It's a committee made up of member entities, so it's us, the COD, the Carmel Area Wastewater District, Santa Cruz. So we form a committee and then it's contracted out to a program that directs the sampling and we coordinate all the sampling efforts. So it's kind of an approach of collaborating as a group to reduce some of the costs.
So all the members are local government agencies, of one sort or
Local
another.
wastewater
Okay.
treatment plants. And we are hoping to become a little more active in that with the transition away from our lab manager and, us trying to fill that. We'll get a little more involved, hopefully in the coming year.
The reason I was asking was to try and get at what's its governance structure and how is its budget set? And I presume this 181,000 is some portion
Yes,
under some
this is our
formula.
portion for our plant, and we have monthly meetings, and we develop the budget as a group, and we try to identify areas where, if you have, 20 years of data, like, well, can we kind of cut back a little bit, maybe the frequency or just altogether? But it does help us stay in tune with changing regulations and having that data so available if regulations do change, we kind of have a baseline. So there's some benefit in addition to meeting our MPDS permitting.
But there's also someone from our staff who participates as more or less an equal with the other agencies in
Yes.
budget discussions and so forth.
Sarah
Okay.
Stevens attends the meetings, and we have an interim lab supervisor that'll be starting to attend the meetings alongside her. When I'm available, I try and chime in as well.
And gets done what needs to be done, but does so at the lowest possible cost. Okay, thank you.
Any, Tyler?
Some follow-ups to that. So I think kind of to the question though, the committee, who administers that? Is it the?
It's rotating. Currently, it's COD. They're the kind of like the chair would kind of, so to speak. But we all have input and we can take on a greater role. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, that once we have a little more stability in the leadership of the lab and environmental group, we'll transition and get a little more involved and provide more direction on what we want to see as an agency out of the program and where we can potentially save costs.
Right, as you guys know, costs continue to go up, and so there's about 8 entities in this group right here that discharge into Monterey Bay. And you have a base cost, everybody has a base cost, and then it is based on, the next cost is based on what you put into the bay as far as what goes out our outfall. And because we're using as much as we can, we anticipate that our portion of the cost will go down. We're not the highest bill on the agenda. I believe it's the city of Santa Cruz that pays higher than we do.
And then the funding that we're sending is going to COG as the administrator?
Yes,
current
yes,
chair?
correct.
Okay, and when does it rotate back to us?
But we've never had it that I'm aware of.
They have in the past.
I think it was Garrett Hurdle was the last person that was on this kind of.
I don't even know that guy's name, but at least over 6.
It's been a
We have
while.
not had it.
It's been a while. Yes.
I'm sorry, but when does it come, or when will it come to us? What was the?
We have to kind of just throw our hat
Make
in the
that
ring.
effort out
Yeah,
there.
it's not like
Interesting.
a
Okay,
a
Thank you.
dedicated rotation. Yeah.
educational, thank you.
That's a good question. Chair Moore.
Just one last suggestion, which has nothing to do with our decision today, and that is since we got an election coming up, there's a possibility that some faces will change over on this board going forward. So the next year, when this item comes up, it might be nice to just have a paragraph showing all the names of all the members and their share of this budget.
So
Absolutely.
the names of the entities are indeed in the staff report and, but we will go ahead and show what their portion is going to, pay for. Cause I've seen it in previous staff reports and I know you guys like data, so we'll add that to next year's.
Good.
Thank you.
Director Hibino.
So the regulations they're enforced by two entities. It's the Monterey, is it the Monterey Bay Sanctuary and also the Water Board, the Regional
this
Water Board?
is-
Yeah, so our regulators are the water board, but this fulfills it's like a collaboration with the sanctuary and it kind of satisfies some of their requirements. So ours are strictly regulated through the water board, but this is kind of like how we cooperate with the sanctuaries through CCLEAN.
So you have to report to them on a quarterly basis, or is
This
it
goes
like
in
a
the annual
monthly?
report. This is part of our permit. So anybody that has a permit to operate, you basically have to include a section in the annual report saying what you have done with the C-Clean program.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
CCLEAN itself also generates a report for the entities with all their sampling.
That's it. Thank you.
And we could check with the public real fast on a potential online comment.
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
And I'll entertain action.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Chair Moore and a second by Director Hibino. Any for additional discussion on the motion? Okay, no further discussion. Well, I just have a comment. I'm happy to learn about C-Clean. It's probably the first time I've heard about it in 6 years, so it's an interesting little thing here, and I'm glad that we're doing this. So I'll take a voice vote on this motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Go on to item 13.
Hello, so that's me again. Monterey One Water utilizes a full sulfide control program to protect infrastructure from corrosive sulfides and employees from harmful fumes. The program supplies the equipment, provides monitoring and reporting and maintenance services, as well as scheduling chemical deliveries. On July 31st, 2023, the board approved the award of a chemical contract to USP Technologies for just over $2.4 million, which has options for 3 one-year extensions based on the previous year's producer price index not to exceed 10%. Staff wishes to extend the contract for an additional 1 year. An agreed upon price of a 3.8% increase meeting contract requirements. The recommended action is that the Recycle Water Committee recommend that the board approve a first amendment to the contract with USP Technologies for the full service sulfide control program in the not to exceed amount of $2,434,320.85. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, board or committee member questions? Any questions? Okay, we'll just check with the public. Any comment on this item online?
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, and I'll bring it back to the board.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? I'll call for a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on to item 14.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Smith and committee members. I'm Matt Thompson, Director of Engineering. At the regional treatment plant, we have 6 secondary clarifiers that provide an important function of removing solids from the wastewater flow. These clarifiers have a large mechanism that is driven by a powerful, bless you, motor and gearbox assembly. In 2021, one of these drives failed. We brought in MISCO, which is the only company in California that supplies our specific type of drives. And we determined that the drives on all six clarifiers required replacement. We decided to spread out the expenditure by replacing 2 drives per year over the course of 3 years. So we previously contracted with MISCO for the past 2 years and have completed 4 drives. The time has come to replace the final 2 drives. So we recommend your committee recommend the board authorize a contract with MISCO for purchase and installation of 2 Evoqua secondary clarifier drives for an amount not to exceed $381,689. This purchase will be made on a sole source basis without competitive bidding because MISCO is the only supplier of the Evoqua drives that fit our particular secondary clarifiers. That's all for me. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Chair Moore.
And just so to go with a different brand of drive, would that require substantial modification of the clarifier structures themselves?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any additional board member? I'm sorry, committee member, can we go to the public? Check on that.
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Bring it back to the board. You have motion, Director Habino, Committee Member Habino, and Director Stefani. Any additional discussion on the motion? Call for a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Move on to, I'm glad, before we move on to 15, I'm just going to say we're doing a lot of the things that we need to do to keep the agency running, and glad to see that. Move on to item 15.
Thank you. Director Smith, members of the board, committee, Mike McCullough, Director of External Affairs. So today we have an item here to get some feedback from the committee and ultimately, hopefully the board in regards to a request by the city of Salinas. I think it's been pretty well chronicled of our past support of them in regards to diverting Pond 3 water. You can see the number of instances that we've done here just recently. And then we were approached at the end of last month to assist them again. And just knowing the delicacy of this topic, we want to have, full participation in making sure that if we were to divert water this time of year, making sure that, Water Resources understands that, City of Salinas understands that. And so we had a Zoom call and we were trying to determine exactly the best way forward. And, I think we may get some comments, but, if or when or if Water Resources didn't need the water in the summer months, would that water be available for recycling? You can kind of see some of the responses is that, would the city be willing to pay for the primary and secondary treatment of the interruptible rate for diversion? Or did the city want the other party to pay for primary and secondary? So that was kind of the discussion during that Zoom call. And so, knowing the history about diversion in the summer months, things like that, instead of making a staff decision, we wanted to get some input from the board to make sure that, whatever direction we move forward with, has the support and the knowledge of our board prior to, having an issue come back that wasn't fully vetted. And so that's just the staff report of just saying, hey, here's the conditions is that, if we were to take it, who would be responsible for paying that interruptible rate for treatment, during the summer months? And, could that water be recycled? And so if I'm open to any questions you may have regarding this item.
Any board member questions or comments? Director Moore?
So staff has been much more involved in the discussions with the folks at Salinas on this issue. Would you characterize their position essentially? Well, let me go back. Historically, all of us collectively have viewed the water that comes into this facility as waste that must be properly disposed of and therefore has no value, in fact, has a cost associated with it to treat it and so forth. But it seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though the city of Salinas is now saying, if this water gets reused for another purpose, it has a value. It is no longer valueless or have a negative value to it, but it's got at least a positive value equal to the treatment cost. Is that an accurate characterization?
Yeah, I mean, and I think if you go back a couple of years ago, in the situation that we were put in, they were requesting funds for whoever took that water at that time as well.
So I have no idea how the board is going to feel about an assertion like that going forward, but certainly it's worth discussing whether or not circumstances have changed sufficiently that inputs to the plant have a value, not necessarily at the same level of, but something kind of sort of similar to pulling up potable water or getting water from a dam, in which case somehow though that value would probably need to be recognized by whoever the end users of that water is. As long as Salinas knows they're potentially opening a Pandora's box in that conceptual circumstance. But certainly we ought to talk about it. All right.
I'd like to provide some clarification. WRA has first right of refusal for that water. However, because the SRDF is running, WRA does not need that water, and they would have paid for primary and secondary treatment. So with first right of refusal, they don't need it. And then my understanding, the city of Salinas would be willing to pay the interruptible rate if it went out or outfall, if it was not utilized by another reuse facility such as AWPF. And so that's the restriction that they have put on. And so we wanted direction from the board as far as how to move forward. So there's really no decision making other than, is this subject need to go to the full board to hammer out how we respond to the city of Salinas.
It occurs to me there's one other
Yes,
potential,
Chairman.
sorry,
No, Chair, go ahead. Sorry.
one other potential complication if our board says we recognize the value of this water and we'll, for instance, make Pure Water Monterey pay for it. But is that in Pure Water Monterey's budget currently? Or,
No, I think not.
I don't think so.
so there would be a little potential hiccup there that somehow would have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
We're meeting all of the allocations that we have to do for Pure Water Monterey. It's not like we're in a situation that we absolutely have to have water. Therefore, with the possibility of paying the interruptible rate. Again, we're moving right along as far as meeting both customers' requirements and water purchase agreements. So this is indeed to help the city of Salinas because they're going against their permit as far as freeboard at their facility.
That was my question.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
All of a sudden now they want us to take the water? Why
Right.
can't we just leave it there and save it for drought years?
Right. They're at the freeboard. There's apparently in the permits so much as far as a level that they can have. And otherwise they're running against violations of the permit.
And costs, ballpark costs to treat the water?
So I will leave that to Mike and Allison who do the numbers.
Yeah, I think that item's coming up maybe next month.
Okay, that's fine.
We heard it in May, I believe, kind of the interruptible rate revision. So they're making a couple of modifications. And so I know Peter's looked at it as well, and that's going to come back in
But a
August.
couple $1,000s ballpark?
For interruptible rate,
Yeah, for an acre foot.
I
Oh, okay, we should have
can't-
these. We'll have it for you next time.
We should look for a buyer too. Seaside Basin needs to be filled up. Just one place.
Interesting. Director Urbino?
So in terms of the contract, is with the city, is this is like a short-term contract, correct?
Yeah.
So were we talking like a year or?
No, usually it was like the one in February, we did it for 2 months. And they informed us they wanted to stop. We stopped and they paid that invoice and that was it.
Okay, because I mean, I think, you know, in terms of longer term contracts, I think we would have to really look at, you know, vet the details because um, you know, during a drought year or whatnot for CSIP, I would think that Monterey Water Resources would want that water.
Right, and Monterey One Water have been trying to work out a long-term agreement for this water for 5 years?
Over 5 years.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're going with short-term. I think the longest one might have been 6 months. So we'd like to get a long-term worked out.
Are they being fined currently by the state?
I don't know.
That I don't know, but that's a good question.
Okay. I have something. Can we check with the public really quick if they have any comment?
See any raised hands from
Okay. Bring it back to the board. I think the action item for today is provide some feedback or something of that nature. Is there a way, and I know that we need to decide, you know, I guess as an agency, I would say, you know, how to deal with this. I feel that the water should be recycled. Um, and, but I mean, as far as the entire board participating on it, I don't know how the rest of the committee members feel. Is it something that typically you would do, staff would handle? I mean, I guess I'm a little bit at a loss of what we're actually recommending to the board on this.
My
And if we could take care of it
understanding-
here, you know.
Yeah, my understanding is that we're recommending to move this subject to the full board to have a discussion. So it could be vetted amongst everybody. Do we take the water with the restriction that the city has stated, which basically will take the water, but it's going out the ocean outfall?
Mm.
And
Well, I think my opinion is that, you know, we should obviously go back and say, you know, we'd like to recycle the water. We feel that the city of Salinas should pay the cost, you know, as any normal other party would pay. That's my position. I just don't know if it needs to go up, you know, to the entire board to rehash, but I don't know. I'll listen to my colleagues on that. I guess I'll get input on that. Ron, did you have any comment? Anyone else have comment?
Yeah, just,
Chair Moore.
I guess I think we probably should engage the full board. If for no other reason than one of our members is the city of Salinas. And maybe we should broaden the discussion beyond just this proposed short-term agreement. Because if we've been trying for 5+ years to get an agreement over this sort of water, thank you staff for trying, but something's not working. And I don't know that the full board could come up with the ideas that would make something work, but I think we ought to try. And it is a broader, more complicated issue. Yes, I think every bit of water we get in, we should attempt to recycle. But we also have to keep in mind that we have only 2 quote unquote users that could accept almost any quantity of water we send them at any given time. And one is the ocean, of course, through our outfall, although there's even a limit to the outfall capacity. And the other is the Seaside Basin currently, but even there's some limits on how much we can push into the basin in any given day or month. So all of those things, it's kind of like you're Amazon and you're trying to sell stuff to the public, but you got a whole bunch of fickle customers, and some days nobody even goes to your website to buy anything, and and you don't know whether they're going to be off the website for a day or a month, and you're trying to keep your input suppliers all happy, and so it gets wound up in economics. It winds up in physical limitations that our engineering firm and our operations folks know about. So it gets complicated. But it'd be nice if we could put together some beneficial solution that works for all of us.
Do you have would you like to make a motion of either on the recommendation or come up with an alternative?
I
You have an idea for that?
Well, I don't know, staff, do you feel like you have direction from this discussion, or do you want a motion?
I think
That's
we
true. We may not need a motion, actually.
don't need a motion.
Okay.
So basically, do you want the full board, which you had mentioned, it would be nice to get input. And maybe by then we could find out if they're paying any fines. I do know that the water board has they've contacted the water board to put some of that water on what they call the ribs, and I don't know what that acronym stands for.
Yeah, rapid infiltration basins.
Thank you. So, which is adjacent and which is closer to the river, and they don't want to do that. The state probably doesn't want to do that if there's another option, and the option would be for us to take it, but we don't feel like we should have to pay for it when they were willing to pay for it if it goes out the outfall. So there's just some idiosyncrasies that we'd like to iron out.
Okay. Well, then with that, yes.
So the question on the water quality, in terms of the cost of recycling that water, what's in the water that makes it so expensive to?
Well, that's why we've kind of implemented that interruptible rate, is that if the water quality is of a quality that's not acceptable, and we've experienced this before in Pond 3, we have the right to shut that down so that, until that water gets to the acceptable quality, then we can take it back again. So that's why that interruptible rate is in place, so that if if it's phosphate or some other, TDS or some other requirement that we have gets out of whack, then we can stop that process from us accepting it. So that's under the auspices of how we would take this water. It would have to fall under our control when we take it. If the water quality is acceptable, then they would pay the treatment costs when we do that.
Okay, and then, so with this recommendation, we're going to the board, and then after that, you'll go back to the city and have.
Well, yes, my guess is at the board, there would be more firm decision-making, like, are you guys okay with us taking the water where the city of Salinas is paying for it, but it's gonna go out our outfall? Technically, that doesn't really chime in with our environmental, we're trying to do the best for the environment, so to speak, when we have a whole nother customer that could use some of it. We don't even need all of it, or wouldn't even be using all of it, because we're meeting our existing AWPF right now. I mean, we already, the allocations that we have for them. So I know Paul wanted it to be presented to you guys. In the past, we've basically taken it during floods, during situations where we wanted to keep the industries still working, and we took it at the direct diversion. So, but Paul just thought with all the requirements that they're putting on us, that it needs to be a decision from the board.
Okay, I think we have adequate direction to move it to the board then. Unless if there's anything else. Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item 17 or 16, I apologize. I think this is the last substantive item. Yes. Mr. Thompson.
Good afternoon again, Chairman Smith and committee members. I'm Matt Thompson, Director of Engineering. As you will likely recall, the bioenergy company Energia is currently working at the regional treatment plant to construct new mixers on our anaerobic digesters and install a food waste receiving station. This will enable our plant to begin receiving truckloads of food waste slurry and convert it into valuable biogas. This will be a big part of our new renewable energy program. When Energia originally proposed to design and build these improvements in late 2022, they had identified a small open area near the back of the plant for installation of the food waste receiving station. That area is shown here in red on the right side of this exhibit. Later, after Energia was under contract and we were further along in the design process, it became apparent to the project team that this location is not ideal. This location is better suited for the replacement high-pressure gas storage vessel that will be needed to accommodate the additional biogas production. And the location is difficult for large tanker trucks to safely enter and exit. So fortunately, due to the recent demolition of the old air scrubber system at the trickling filters, a good space became available near the trickling filters. This space, highlighted in yellow here on the left side of this exhibit, is ideal for the food waste receiving station because tanker trucks can easily and safely drive through and drop off their food waste slurry. So we asked Energia to prepare for placing the food waste receiving station in this new location. Additional engineering work, particularly site drainage and mechanical plans, are needed. This engineering work was not part of Energia's original contract. So Energia has requested $158,502 for the additional engineering work. Staff agrees the additional amount requested is reasonable and appropriate. So we're asking the committee to agree to recommend approval of an amendment to the energy services agreement with Energia in the amount of $158,502. To be clear, this proposed amendment is just for the engineering work. After we complete the additional engineering, there may be other costs for the physical work needed at the site to accommodate the food waste receiving station. We will be doing our best during design with the site design to minimize these additional costs. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for the report. Committee member questions or comments? We'll check with the public. Any public comment online? And we're on item 16 in the meeting. Any public comment on item 16 in the chamber? All right, seeing none. Close public comment, bring it back to the board for discussion and action.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. That's our final substantive item. I'll now ask for, we'll go to item 17, staff reports.
I
Mr.
don't have
Perry.
any staff reports.
Okay, no staff reports. Mr. Gilpin, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I think staff's aware, I guess, that EPA did enact new regulations relative to PFAS, which certainly could affect our operations. That's the only thing I'd report.
PFAS. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I'll ask my fellow committee members if they have any committee member reports. Seeing none, that'll do it. And thank you very much. Oh, Ms. Chair Moore.
You said reports, but
Yeah, reports.
just have probably a boilerplate comment that we ought to repeat rapidly and loudly. You know, folks get so used to taking a shower and the water goes away and they never see it again, running the dishwasher, all their appliances that produce wastewater. And that just sets up an expectation in the minds of the public that it always will work and that this water will be safely disposed of. So I think it behooves us to remind the public just how important the work is that our staff does 24/7 to keep these fluids full of PFAS, full of bacteria, full of viruses, full of all sorts of nasty stuff that you don't want to come in contact, process it, make it safe again, reuse some of it, put some of it in the ocean so that in such a way that the surfers don't get sick. right? All of this is incredibly important. And it's understandable that the public completely loses track of it. But it is very, very important for us to maintain the trust of the public in what we do. Because imagine if the public no longer trusted the safety of the water we give to the farmers to put on their crops, or if they no longer trusted the safety of the water we were putting into the Seaside Basin. For the public would be in serious trouble. We would, of course, be in trouble too. But I think it's worthwhile periodically reminding the public of the importance of this, and maybe finding ways through our outreach programs to educate them a bit better. Because we've heard collectively, I've heard through other channels, an amazing amount of misunderstanding of what it is we do, and a fair amount of, just general distrust of anything that is called government. It's unfortunate, but staff does a great job. I trust staff. The board trusts staff. The same people who say, I don't trust you as an organization, will go home and take a shower and dispose of their water in our system. So they trust us, but they don't trust us. So I'm confused. At any rate, I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Vice Chair Williamson.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide an update that at our council meeting on Tuesday, the city of Monterey moved forward with transitioning our portion of our wastewater to the tax rolls. So that will be removed from this agency's burden, and we're going to go straight with the county. And my assumption is that PG and Seaside were kind of waiting to see what might happen with the city of Monterey. So there it is. I don't know what's going to happen in PG and Seaside, but I just wanted to provide that as a way of an update as this ever evolving issue continues moving forward. So.
Thank you, Vice Chair. That's a good point. We appreciate it. I will comment that PG, we already did hear the item, and we've stayed with the status quo for now, in essence. But it can be raised again should the need arise.
I'll share that the factor that caused us to continue moving forward is obviously we don't know what M1W plans on doing, and our staff took a lot of time like the city of Monterey staff has taken a lot of time in working with M1W staff and making the transition happen, the funding that we spent to advertise and do the public protests. And so if we end up coming back to this point, we don't want to have to worry about it. So at this point, we've made the transition. It's kind of like the Band-Aid's already been ripped, so we might as well just kind of continue on the path. And if things do shift again, we don't have to worry about that. So.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
Ron.
did the same thing at Castroville with the Moss Landing area.
Awesome.
In Castroville, we collect property taxes for our sewer, so we don't have a billing.
Yeah.
Moss Landing, we do have billing, and we're on the tax room.
There it is.
Yeah. Right. Well done. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, staff, and great work. And we'll see you next time. Adjourned.